Well, this is a collection. This is a collection of articles and essays. It is based on the conference that was organized in 2013 at Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute. The title of the conference was Quo Vadi Ukrainian History. So the attempt was made to look at the professional writing history, mostly in the West, United States, Canada, Western Europe, and to try to understand where we are and where the entire field is moving. And that conference was one of three conferences that were co-organized by Harvard Ukrainian Research Institute and the Institute of History in Ukraine. So the two others were, one of them took place in Kyiv, and it dealt with the legacy of the Soviet historiography. Another was organized in Munich, and together with the Peter Jacek Center at the CAUS and Ukrainian Free University in Munich, and it dealt with the interwar Ukrainian historiography and diaspora historiography. And what happened at Harvard, that was mostly people from the West working on Ukrainian history. Many of them, the majority of them, actually do also other type of history, Russian imperial, Soviet history, and Ukrainian history can be just part of their interest. And that was, again, to assess the state of the field. And the biggest question that was there was the relationship between the national paradigm of historiography and this all new trends that emerged in the West, like global history, like history that focuses on the history of the regions. And what does that do? Does this undermine the legitimacy of Ukrainian history as a national history? Or there are ways actually to integrate and accommodate these new trends in the world historiography in the way that would change and bring up to speed writing on Ukrainian history today. And my reading of what happened and the chapters that are there is quite positive. I'm posing at the end of the introduction that I have a question that, like the historians of empires are now talking about the need for creation of formation of a new imperial history, there is a need for new national history and national history in general, but in Ukrainian case in particular, given these debates that are happening today in Ukraine, which are very important, can be positive, can be destructive, but again, Ukraine is there in the situation where it has really to think hard and maybe think new about its history and think about it in the way that it would not divide the nation there, but unite the nation. First of all, the Western historiography is not uniform, and there are different approaches, and the same is true for Ukrainian one. There are different groups of people looking differently, and most of the debates actually happening within Ukraine, between different Ukrainian historians. But what unites two approaches, again, the differences are there, but what allows the dialogue, what unites is the fact that, well, we recently, and I know that on your program, there was a discussion of the role of Orest Subtelny in rewriting, reimagining Ukrainian history, and the role that his survey of Ukrainian history played in Ukraine. So that the generation of Ukrainians, Ukrainian historians whose formative years were in the 1990s were formed by this Western diaspora, you can call it in any way you want, narrative of Orest Subtelny, so which provides already some common background and some basis for understanding. I was also very, very pleased, and I didn't expect that the Gates of Europe, my short survey of Ukrainian history, was translated in Ukraine now in the fall, and I just heard news that the first print run of 10,000 copies were sold out in the first 2 months, and they published another 10,000 copies, which again, basically, in my opinion, supports the same kind of argument. This is nothing compared to the popularity of Subtelny, but basically supports the same argument that we very often start our debates and discussion on the basis of same narrative, and it's not like we are writing completely in different languages historiographically, that there is this communication. We are in the process of dramatic rethinking of it, because one thing that the events in Ukraine showed, that whatever we had before didn't work. Didn't work in a sense that the history, politics, the writing of history, the historical education in Ukraine did very little to preclude the divisions that happened in Ukraine. And again, of course, the Russian aggression is the primary reason for what is going on. But for some reason, these ideas got more traction, Russian ideas, let's say in the Crimea or in Donbass, less traction in the center and no traction, let's say, in the West. So the question is what new Ukrainian narrative should be that would unite Ukraine together. And it would be foolish on my part to say, okay, I know the answer. But I also would be very skeptical to anyone who would say, okay, this is the way to go. The only way to figure out is by talking to each other and trying different things. So again, the Gates of Europe is again one of the attempts to do that. But again, I didn't really write it for the Ukrainian audience. And again, you only so far can go with these transplants, either from Toronto or from Boston into Ukraine. At the end, it has to be a Ukrainian debate and discussion with inclusion of people from outside, but the core should be Ukrainian and solution should be Ukrainian. What inspires me, and this is, it would be a banal answer, but kind of a younger generation. We always hope that, okay, we didn't manage to do that, so the next generation will do that. So that is banal, but this is also true. And we have the situation when you look at who comes to North America to study Ukrainian studies or Ukrainian history. It's mostly people from Ukraine, younger people. There are ideas, they bring them back and forth. And that is very, very positive, because the people who will create this new understanding of Ukrainian history have to overcome the deep divisions that came into existence in our generation and between our generation of scholars, where it's not just the approaches are different, but the personal relations were broken and so on and so forth. And the same when you look in Ukraine today in terms of the Institut Nationalnej Pamięci. It's not just debates, it's svarka. It's just the lines drawn very clearly. I'm right, you're wrong, and that's not the way ahead. And I'm not pointing figures specifically at one group or another. I'm just trying to talk about the historiographic situation that we have. We have to have dialogue. We have quarrel. And again, to degree that we can actually do something to overcome that, this is positive. But I am hopeful that the next generation would say, okay, guys, that's the way to go. That's not relevant anymore. The new society that is being born in Ukraine through this crisis deserves better. So that's my hope. It's a very different model. It's a very different model. In that sense, Ukrainian model is closer to what is happening here in North America, in the Western world. So the consensus it's difficult to achieve it, but you get to the consensus through the dialogue and discussion, and sometimes it's unpleasant. There, it's a very different model where there is like it was during the Soviet times. There is a Ministry of Truth. There is just once the policy is formed, then the policy is enforced by the state institutions, with leaving really very little space for debate or discussion. So you get in the situation where an interpretation of the Second World War potentially can put you behind bars, right? So criminalization of the historical debate and the opinion that is non-conformant with the state position. So that is two different models. And again, in the short run, as you can see with all this Project New Russia and things like that, this authoritarian model can be more effective. But in the long run, judging at least by the experience of the West, North America, Europe, and things like that, the debate produces stronger societies. So it looks like that Ukrainian society made its choice toward some form of pluralism in this conflict. Well, I came to Canada during the coup in 1991. So, and I was teaching as a visiting professor at the University of Alberta, then came back, then returned. So basically, my access to this different understanding of Ukrainian history was not directly through his textbook, but through personal connections with him, personal connections with people like Frank Sysyn, Bohdan Krawchenko, then Zenon Kohut later, and reading more widely than that. So I wasn't in Ukraine to be kind of a benefit just of that book. I had broader more possibilities to learn, but also partake in what was happening here. But I personally remember one of Orest's presentation in Ukraine. That was probably before 1991, when he was talking about Mazepa and Mazepists and their different understanding of what they wanted to achieve and things like that. And that presentation really struck me. I really remember it still today. And that was the model where we clearly knew, and it was very obvious. You see that he was as Ukrainian as it gets. He was a patriotic Ukrainian, but he was also a good scholar who, when talking about Mazepa, was not following the traditional mythology about Mazepa was there to proclaim independence of Ukraine from the very beginning, was born with this idea and things like that. As a scholar, he was looking at the possibilities, he was looking at options, he was explaining very rationally why the revolt took place. And from that point of view, that for me was one of the models, how you can be a Ukrainian historian, a historian of Ukraine, but at the same time write a good quality history that is understood and that is valued by people who don't have necessarily embroidered shirt in their home. So it was a short presentation, but again, I remember the kind of a little revolution that it created within me. So for me, Orest was a good scholar, and but he was also part of a kind of a broader group of people with whom I was in touch and who influenced me. What is new narrative we are trying to figure out, and contribution of people like Mark von Hagen, like Timothy Snyder, are very important. Very important because these people were not trained as specialists in Ukrainian studies. They come to Ukraine from asking different questions, and with a kind of a broader framework of those questions, broader interest in the region as a whole. And that helps us, who are trained as specialists in Ukrainian studies, to place our research in a broader context, to be in dialogue, to be in communication with others. And this is the role of people like Snyder or von Hagen is extremely important. There, just the breaking walls around the Ukrainian intellectual ghetto, creating windows and doorways and things like that. And that's the way how the living organism can function, with light and with air coming in and coming out. So they are coming from outside and trying to do that, when people like Subtelny were trying to do it from inside. So I think, and that's how a new structure is being formed and created.